Kia ora e te whānau, and welcome to the New Zealand Institute of Building Industry Insights. My name is Pamela Bell. I'm the CEO here at the Institute of Building, and I'm thrilled to be joined today with two gentlemen who are going to talk to us about productivity in the construction system, specific to the housing system at Kāinga Ora. We've got Matthew Hulett from Kāinga Ora and Paul Jenkins from Jennian, and I'll let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their backgrounds. Matthew.
Sure. G'day everyone. Matthew Hulett. I've been in New Zealand for about 8 years now. I'm a Queenslander. Been in and around the property development and construction industry for quite a long time, I guess, but probably a bit over 25 years. I spent quite a bit of time in that, but my main focus was working in delivering projects, but worked in some productivity and systems orientated sort of consultancies as well, but in and around construction and property. That's my main background.
Awesome. And you swapped Brisbane for sunny Auckland, sunny Tamaki.
Yeah. So I was actually brought over by Housing New Zealand, sort of imported a couple of Aussies when they started sort of looking to move into alternative projects and things like that, and that's so they brought me over for the Grays Avenue project in Auckland, and then I sort of started that and then moved into running the program teams, and from there into the delivery transformation group.
Cool. Well, we've got a good spread across the motu across the country today, because I'm in Punaki, Wellington, and in Otatahi, Christchurch, we've got Paul. Paul, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Pam. Hi, guys. My name's Paul Jenkins. I'm currently the operations manager and shareholder of Jennian Canterbury. My background is at the standard, left school, become a tradesperson. I then went into junior project management pretty soon after I qualified, and I've been involved in high volume residential construction since. Probably one of my passions is methodology, systems, process, and I've been lucky enough to learn my roles as technology's advanced over the years as well. So yeah, that's my background.
Awesome. I think you're being a bit modest too, because you might have had a chat before we went live, and you talked about representing New Zealand playing with the Colts as a young nipper.
Oh, I did a bit of rugby when I was younger. Definitely feeling it now, that's for sure, every time I get out of bed. But
no.
Yeah, the rugby days served me well. But yeah, and actually due to a rugby injury is one of the reasons I left the actual building and became into project management. So
nice. Yeah. You've taken that attitude towards high performance right into your job, and we're going to hear a bit more about that in a minute. Awesome. Okay. Look, I think most New Zealanders are aware there's been a lot of information about Kāinga Ora in the news in the last 12 months. I think we all know that there's a huge amount of good work that Kāinga Ora is doing, and it'd be great to learn more about the good news stories about the work that's being done. I understand we're going to hear some pretty mind-blowing statistics about how the housing delivery system has reduced the amount of time in order to deliver housing. But first of all, Matt, can you give us a bit of background about how this came about? What was the problem to solve? Tell us a bit about the journey. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So a few years ago, the actual genesis of all of this really began in a little bit of an unexpected way. So when I first started working in running the program team, that's where Housing New Zealand was being asked to build a lot more, and so they were growing rapidly and starting to build a lot of stuff. And the danger and downside of scaling up quickly is it gets really hard to maintain a level of consistency, and it gets and quality in more in the work, not in the end product, but in just in the way that the work is conducted. And that was sort of one of the first parts of it. And so we started engaging with the sector a bit to try and nail down how can we get better at this whilst not losing the pace. And we sort of started getting feedback from, hey, well, if you standardize the plans, they'll help us. And so we did that. But then what we found was we did that, and we did get some benefits, but we didn't get what we needed. And so we had to go back again and say, hey, okay, that didn't really move the needle enough. What else do we need to do? And we need to change how you procure. So we did that. We moving to capacity partnering arrangements where we basically procured like, a big chunk of homes over a duration, as opposed to one-off projects to try and get better at a lot of that sort of stuff. And again, we did get some really good benefits out of that, but it sort of didn't move the needle as much as we would like. And so again, we went back and asked, so it was sort of iterative. We go, how can we get better? And we're sort of, sometimes your biggest critics are some of your best informers where your innovation is required. And so it was quite beneficial for us to have people who are quite happy to be unhappy and give you that feedback. But the big learning was probably the last part, where we sort of did some initial baseline detailing and data collection of just, okay, where's the pain? And pre-construction is one key element where there's a lot of pain all the time. And it's because knowledge work is really hard because you can't see. Like if Paul's team are putting up a fence and they say the fence is done, and I drive past and see the fence is not done, well, I know the fence is not done. Whereas if you ask a knowledge worker where the work's up to and they say it's at a point, you can't see. So it's hard. So we needed to find some ways. And so one of the things we found was one metric was, well, how many information requests do we get from council? And the content of that. And how often do we get the same question on projects over and over again? And we found that the percentage that we were getting was really high. Like, it was sort of 80%, 80+% of all dwellings were getting a significant amount of RFIs. And it's just really massively detrimental to the project flow. So I started a project where we worked with all the designers, and we basically met with the owners of the architectural firms on a weekly basis, and we gave them a plan versus actual sort of feedback loop. How many RFIs you got, who was it, what training have you done, just sort of that sort of stuff. And we got a massive reduction in RFIs, which is great. Like it went down to from high 80s to, I think it was about 14 or 15%. Like it was a massive reduction, which is great. And we maintained that for about 3 months. And one of the tools we used, because we had Consentium then, and Consentium was up and running, but it wasn't fully authorized to do consenting, because there's a 3-month process you have to go through. So I use them as a QA machine to sort of give me good knowledge and feedback, because it's not something that I can do.
So for those who don't know, Consentium is your in-house BCA.
Yes, yeah.
Building construction authority. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I should have. Yeah, so I utilise those that skill set from that group to provide feedback, and that's how we got the numbers down. And then we did a handover back to the architects, and I did another data collection about a month and a half later, and we're back up to about 70%. So as soon as you step away, the detail's just not there, and it's not because people are bad. It's just because people aren't disciplined, and over time, the sector just doesn't work like that. And so we sort of hurry up and wait. It's the focus is on getting it done. It's not getting it done to perfection or well. Mm-hmm. So that was when we realized, okay, we need to take a stronger hand here. And so that was the creation of Project Velocity. So Project Velocity's main focus was, how do we make it so that we get a controlled environment to minimize variation and waste? How do we make it so we can reduce cycle time and error rates? And the first focus was very much on the pre-construction. So we really spent a lot of time on that. And then the second phase, the first chunk of the first phase was on pre-construction. The second chunk was on construction. And then the second phase, and that was purely focused on time, waste, errors, things like that. And then the second phase was very much on cost.
Okay. So, and can I ask, in naming something Project Velocity, where you're clearly really interested in time, what ideas did you have on day zero around what you wanted to save? What was the initial kind of dream goals around?
So the ambition. So we set an ambition of 40% time saving. Yes. In the initial targets, if you will.
Yeah. And then we started pre-construction to delivery.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We wanted to save 40% on both. Sort of, but the overarching, the initial paper that I wrote was a 40% reduction in the total duration cycle time. So that's both phases together. And yeah, that was really and for us, baseline data. So it was taking us on average 997 days, calendar days to make a home. That was including site identification, due diligence, design, contract construction, completion. Right.
Did you say 178?
997 days.
Sorry, 997 days. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, and each of those chunks had, and that was based off 5 years of delivery.
Yeah.
The downside of taking averages, right, is a project could be 2 homes or it could be 500 homes. Like, so if you just, I think it's just, we got to be careful when we start looking at days, because it can,
100%. Yeah.
so it's not really a great metric. People talk about them quite a lot, but it's not something, the real focus for me is on the difference between plan to actual. I'm more interested in that and waste. So anyway, the work went from mapping that, and then we came to an ambition setting phase, which is basically data collection's done. We've done some ideation and we've got a solution, we think. And this, based off the data and what we'd programmed, we thought we could do it in a time frame, and that was like basically about a 90% reduction in time for the design phase.
Wow.
And we were targeting a 50% reduction in construction phase. So but our one decision we did make in there was we keep cycle time at a calendar day, and you do that and that's fine. But measuring days when you're not working is actually not useful for productivity. You only want to measure the days you work, like activity days, because, so that's sort of one of the key components of how long are we working, how long should we be working, what's the utilization, just things like that. So Project Velocity basically designed a process, and the first steps we made was to create a mini business unit. And that was just to get everyone together in a room, so that we wanted to change the communication method. So because emails they're not actually not designed for communicating, and they don't work like that. Emails are normally used, at times they're weaponized, but they're just not a good method for getting everyone across the line. And they're also massively disruptive for productivity. So we put everyone in a room, and we basically just, told them you're not allowed to use emails anymore. Like, if you need to share a document and you can't do it through a shared thing for whatever weird reason, you can email, but other than that, there should be 0 emails.
Great.
So
what did you replace email with, out of interest?
By having everyone in the room, and by having a management system, a way of working that basically focused on high levels of communication. So the first step was getting them in a room. The second step, initially the second step was planned to be a management system or way of working. But what we found was there was a couple of other components there where we had people, everyone knows what their job is and what they're doing. They're highly skilled people, really clever. But what we found was that they didn't understand what the other people in the group did and what the impact of their work was on each other's work, if that makes sense. So if they don't do something to a level of quality that's acceptable, what's the rework knock-on impact and that sort of stuff. So we spent quite a bit of time where we actually got the designers together and we trained them on what each other does. And one of the interviews, because we did lots of interviews, like we did over 1,000 interviews in this data collection phase. One of the example throwaways we had from an engineer was, he made the comment that the thing that drives him crazy the most is planners, right? Because he gives them their report, they take his energy. He was a geo engineer. He was saying, I give them my report and they use the wrong numbers all the time, that would be quite frustrating, I understand. But I asked him the last report he wrote, how long was it? And he was like, it's hundreds of pages long. I was like, well, no one wants to read that, man. Like, but the question I had for him was, cool, but you do a summation, right, of what the planner needs, like a little table. And I was like, well, I don't know what they need, like exactly, but I give them, So we asked the planner what they got, and they said it's a bloody nightmare. Like, I'm trying to read through this report that I don't really know what the friggin' hell it's talking about, and they just sort of have a smattering of numbers everywhere. Because sometimes they do have stuff in a centralized place, but there's other elements that need to come together that they don't understand. And so in the end, we had a planner draw a table, and that was one of the first rules we created. So the first rule we created was the client is the person downstream from your information, and you have to give them perfect. So you're not allowed to give them okay. So that was sort of that part. So
and the client downstream is setting the way they want to receive information, and you just simply have to fit in.
Well, they're the client. Yeah, they're the client. They're not like another consultant. They're your client now. And if you want to give them something other than what you've agreed, you've got to get signed permission by your client. And so that was sort of the part. And again, that's sort of something that moves over time. We were sort of more trying to do a change process because you don't want to create bureaucracy. But in that first instance, we just didn't want people changing the rules because it was harder for them. We wanted them to make it so they did perfect and did it well, like often.
It's so simple in theory and so interesting to see how you've actually executed this.
Yeah, so so that was that first phase, had them all in the room, trained them so they all understand each other, help them understand who the client is now, because Kāinga Ora is not the client. Like, yeah, we can't have it like that. You can't have it so that the client gets to sit out on the outside and always be right, and that's not helpful. Like,
no, the person you're passing over the fence to is your client.
Yeah. Well, like Paul's one of the ultimate clients of the pre-construction phase. Like the actual constructor is, if the pre-construction does a poor quality design, his job's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we don't do that. But so that was that phase there. And then so we identified everyone's in the room. We made sure that everyone was trained and understood. Then we made sure everyone understood that who the client is now and how you're going to work. And then we created a management system, which is basically a manual or a document. And that broke down. We're going to meet each week for a big chunk of time, up to a half a day, and that's where everyone really gets fully aligned and integrated. And in that meeting, we integrate the week gone. We plan the next week in minutes of resource and time and task, and then we do like lessons learned, HR problems in that meeting. Every morning we do a 20-minute meeting, and that's there. We talk only about what we're doing today, what exactly we're doing today, and the questions are the same 3 questions you get asked every day, which is, how'd you go yesterday is the first question. The second question is, what are you planning to do today? Have you got everything you need? And the third question is, can we help you? Like, same process. And then during the day, there's only one manager in the whole team, and they're a supervisor, and their job is purely just to check in on people. So they do short interval management across everybody, and all they're checking is, can I help you? You okay? Is everyone okay? And they sort of work their way around the room every day and just bounce from person to person, just to make sure that everyone's good, and they're hunting for variance, because variance helps you manage. So that's the pre-construction phase. There's quite a lot more to it, but I assume the team are probably more interested in the construction side. But
I think if it's all right, Matt, I might just ask Paul, in terms of the pre-construction phase that Matthew's just explained to us, what are you noticing in the information that's being handed to you for delivery, for build? What are your reflections on that process?
The information we get is really clear and accurate. So, and the one thing I will say about the pre-construction phase with HDS is the ability to collaborate together. And if an issue does come up on site, it's not just forgotten about. So if we come across a detail or something that it's not quite working, or potentially could be done simpler or better or quicker or cheaper, we've got that communication back through the project manager at HDS, and they don't just sit on it. It's actually it's something that they action, and if it is a viable option, then a global can gets issued for a change. And the plans are always developing. So 2 years ago today, actually probably 2 years ago this week, we first got involved, and some of those plans had been drawn 12 months prior, and we sort of inherited some of the, well, I won't say it was clunky, but it was new to us. But compared to the plans we're getting now, the lessons learned that the build partners feeding back to the Kāinga Ora team, that they're actually listening to what we're saying, and they're actually making some changes, which often falls on deaf ears, and we just we do the old rinse and repeat. We just carry on doing what we're doing, hoping for a different result. So.
And Paul, you and Jennian are a build partner for Kāinga Ora. Can you explain to us what a build partner is, or how you become a build partner?
So basically, a build partner is, and rightly so, Kāinga Ora don't call us contractors, or they call us partners, because we collaborate. But we get a set of plans to price, and we've got to submit our pricing along with our scheduling. There's a bit of a vetting process that we did at the start, and essentially we partner with Kāinga Ora to build houses. So it's you couldn't have got the word in any better, Matt. We are a build partner.
Great, and you've been doing this for a wee while by the sounds.
Yeah, 2 years ago. So just a bit of background how we got involved. For those of you who know Canterbury, it's Cup Week at the moment next week. So exactly 2 years ago was Cup Week. We got invited into the HDS offices, myself and Dwayne Prendergast, who's a fellow shareholder, And we walked into a room and there were boards all over the windows with post-it notes. And we thought, oh, what are we getting ourselves into? But there was a method to the madness. And we got explained what the process was. We got explained how the pre-construction phase was going and the gains it made. And then we understood exactly who and what we were dealing with. And the important part for me is that we were then invited back. It would have been a couple of weeks later. There were 4 or 5 build partners in the room, and we actually went through each individual task of a build, and we weren't told how long it takes to do a task. We were asked how long it takes to do a task. And granted, we were challenged, but we actually mapped this whole construction process out together through the velocity system back then, which is now HDS. So that's essentially what we did at that meeting. Is we were challenged on task duration. So as an example, a painter takes 8 to 10 days to paint a house. We were asked why. How can we make this quicker? How can we be more efficient and reduce the waste to benefit both HDS and our business? Plus, there's also consideration towards the contractor. You know, if a contractor can start on day 1 and finish on day 6 uninterrupted, with no rework, with no delays with materials or product, or waiting for inspections, they're gonna improve their business as well. So it was a really big collaboration, which was really cool.
Well done. And I assume that when you get asked a question around the subcontractors were engaged with or were in the room with the post-it notes. I mean,
yeah, the key members of the build partners were. So we went away from that meeting, and within a week we had probably 60 or 70 contractors come and sit down in our boardroom, and we broke them down into different stages of the build and says, right guys, we're just about to commit to this. This is the expectation. This is what we're actually doing now. We're changing the way we think, and we have to change the way we think. So
great. So you've invested all this time in the planning, sorting out the lean principles, developing the manuals. Can you guys fast forward us to where things are today in terms of some of the lessons learned or improvements? I guess Matthew from a program perspective, and then Paul from a delivery perspective.
Yeah, from where we are today, the difference now is our focus moved to optimization. So like Kaizen or continuous improvement is a key element, and it's the focus is on, or the intent behind Kaizen, right? Is what's the smallest intervention I can make each day to keep going until we grind to get to perfection. The trick is obviously making it that you do a system-wide intervention, not these little one-off things and end up with 1,000 people doing something different. And the simple reality, and Paul's already alluded to it, is the knowledge and innovation is not inside Kāinga Ora, it's inside the partners. Like Paul knows more about how to lead his business than I'll ever know. So it makes more sense for me to grill Paul and then try and codify what he just said, or to talk to his painter, than it does for me to tell Paul how to run his business, because I don't have a clue. But the problem for us was not only getting Jennian, as an example, to operate in the way we wanted to, because they were already good at what they did. The problem was getting everyone to operate the same, because if we have multiple build partners and I've got Paul smashing it and then I've got other builders not following it, well, that's the problem. And so that's where optimization comes in. Like, hey, how do we make it so we get people being more the same? How do we get it so that we can share the learnings? And because there are little things that people do different, but and we're using like cans as one of the ways that we're communicating, or like, you know, or CIs is another one. Basically, we're getting, you know, like the client instruction where we're putting stuff out to them.
Okay.
But other elements of it's sort of where it's really focused on getting feedback from build partners on what's wrong with designs, getting feedback from the designers on what's wrong with the process, getting, you know, and the trick is not, we're wanting to ensure that we have a codified and stable environments to work in. And it's because we're wanting to give people the opportunity to use their imagination and their amazing skills to make really cool developments, not to try and survive a bureaucratic process.
Nice.
That's sort of, but people will always agree with that because we do and it makes sense. But then when you put them back into operations in the real world, that's not what we give them. We give them bureaucratic, shitty process, and it's hard. And I don't mean just in Kāinga Ora, I mean the whole development process in the private sector. It's the same, right? They've got to survive through councils and hard. So we sort of take something that's challenging and make it harder. So we want to really codify that. Yeah, that's probably my main part.
Okay, cool. I'm going to circle back and ask a little bit more about culture change within the organisation and who you're working with and how you affect that. But Paul, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about how being part of the housing delivery system has changed the way Jennian delivers houses? And I know you cited some numbers when we chatted earlier. It'd be great to hear those.
Yeah, so our first project, so when we come into HDS, or sorry, Project Velocity, now HDS, when we come into it, the required build time for, we'll call it three single-story bedroom houses on the same site, they're sort of targeting around that 75 to 80 days. Foolishly, or not foolishly, actually, thankfully, I put my neck out and said, no, we can do it in 65. Only because I've had the experience with on-site delivery and methodology and speed. So from when we started, the first site was 68 days. This is working days. Then we got it down to 65. Then third project was 52, and then the last one we completed was 47 working days. So
wow. Okay, so you've gone from 560s to 47. You've knocked a third off the time frame.
Yeah, we did, but we didn't speed up. We sped the process up, but the main thing for doing that was we reduced all waste, and I'm talking waste as in delays on site or timing. So I worked out pretty quickly how best to build 3 single-story houses on a site. The key to that was mainly, or probably a number of things that we do. Is one is our scheduling system that we run internally. One is our communication process that we run internally, and the third one was just making sure we had the resource to do it. So we would, if you've got three houses on one site, why am I getting 3 different builders? One builder to do 3. I might as well get 3 builders, and just working through the sequence. So a classic example of how to reduce time, and you can do this, potentially on private builds, but if I look at a pre-stop inspection or a bracing ply inspection on the exterior of a house, okay, so we engage with a external consultant, which is the engineer with Kāinga Ora and Consentium. So what are they actually looking for? They're looking to sign off the bracing units. Okay, there's 3 bracing units on the external wall. So rather than typically what we would do is we would get the eco-ply installed on day 1, you'd have the inspection on day 2, you'd then tape it, and then you can carry on. We got that down to, they put out of their trucks at 7:30, they put the 3 sheets of eco-ply on first, nailed it off for the surveyor, for the structural engineer, book him in for 9 o'clock to inspect it, sign it off, and we carry on. So a 2.5 day process has got down to 6 hours.
Right.
And that's just thinking smarter about how we could do things on site.
Nice, by planning ahead and coordinating and communicating.
Communicating, yeah, and some people I've heard comments about the quality, but we're not actually rushing what we do. We're just taking the fat out of what we do.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And you mentioned also when it comes to 2-story houses, you've managed to move from 105 days to 85.
85 working days, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yes.
And there's a lot of other things we need to consider. It's not just the house; it's all the external works. It's the we've got a joel, which is the main shared driveway. We've got curb and channel. We've got patios. We've got full landscaping, fences, and planting. So, yet again, you look at your schedule and you work out where these can fit in. So, I just mentioned to Pam earlier as well that before we started with HDS, our typical build schedule had probably 55 to 65 tasks, depending on where it was and who the council was. We're now up to a minimum of 110 tasks on a standard build schedule. So that's micromanaging every individual trade, supplier, delivery. In inspections are in there. We've got external, internal communication that we need to tick along the way to make sure that the process has been followed. So for our business, in our private sector, it's increased the way that I personally think about how we project manage or build a house.
That's great. So we're seeing the number of days go down and the number of items on the build schedule to go up. I'm thinking there's a great book called The Checklist Manifesto. I'm pretty sure he'll be loving this right now. That's exactly the kind of way to ensure consistency around your quality and delivery. You mentioned also around in your internal operations guide, Paul, that there's a number of sections, and while health and safety is always top of the list, how communication is your number 2. Can you tell us a bit more about how communication is part of delivering the housing delivery system?
You can't do anything without communication, whether it's at home with your kids or your wife, or if you're involved in a team. But technology's helped us out massively over the last probably 5 to 6 years, but even going back further. But if we don't communicate, if we don't set the expectation with what we need to be done, how we expected the job to be done. So an old rugby coach of mine used to say it was a star theory. You set targets, you achieve results, and that's critical. We're very conscious, Dwayne and I, that they've got the business here that contractors or suppliers don't get out of bed every morning and say, right, how can we help Jennian today? We've got to front foot that. And we also need to be really conscious of the fact that we're dealing with some contractors that probably don't utilise technology as much as we do. So then we just sort of sit them down and we'll say, well, how do you want to be communicated with? Do you want an email? Do you want a notification from the system? Do you require a text message? So it's understanding your trade base and your supply chain, and just knowing, like, for example, I know 3 or 4 of my trades, they've got young children that they have to get to school before 9 o'clock in the morning. So why am I going to ring them at 9 o'clock? So I'll sit there in the morning and I'll get on my phone and I'll send a text message and I'll delay it until 9:30 because I know that he's free. So and then he's not getting cluttered up with what he's doing. And
that's that customer mindset, isn't it? You're putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about what it's going to be like for them to receive the communication.
Correct.
And Matt, it seems that customer mindset and getting into the shoes of your customer, otherwise sometimes known as empathy, is a key part to lean construction, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
Can you tell us, Matt, a little bit about how you've managed to make that culture? Sorry, I'll let you carry on.
No, that's fine. I can talk to that.
Yeah, cool.
So the cultural driver and a lot of that sort of stuff is key. The main focus that we've sort of taken to us around the change management is we want it to become a learning organisation at its core, its truest core, with a focus on optimisation. Like, that's really what we want to do. But what we want to optimise is processes, but what we want to optimise is skill sets and people. And I don't mean we wring the rag on, I mean we educate them. Like, I don't think we manage anymore. I think we dole out work, we don't manage. Like, manage is about leadership, and it's about caring enough about your people to actually make sure that their workload is sufficient, but it's not too much. Like, in a lot of workplaces, how do we know if someone's got too much on? Well, they break down. Like, there's got to be a better way than that. So what we wanted to do was to understand, firstly, how long things should take, and the times need to be set by the person at the coalface, not management. Management don't know, right? They need to be set by coalface people. But then also we need to find out who's good at doing it. And I don't mean fast, I mean who does it well, in a reasonable time. Okay, and now let's take that and let's train everyone at task level. So task level training is a key element, because then what we get is we get consistent approaches to activity. We get people working the same, we get things, and it makes it so that we have a level of sameness across the unit, and then people are working together, and it makes it a lot more cohesive. Like, it's sort of interesting when we talk about teams, and this is more from a Kāinga Ora thing, but it's across all businesses, really. We say, oh, I'm from that team or whatever, but normally what we mean is we actually report to the same person. but that doesn't make you part of a team. Like a team plans together, they work together, they learn together, they train together, they work like they're working on the same stuff. Like that's what makes them a team, not who you report to. So like when we're we didn't do any sort of we didn't do we didn't do posters and coffee mugs with Project Phoenix on it. What we did was grassroots training and coaching. But the thing what I did wrong though, is a lessons learned for me, was because we focused so much on grassroots, on driving people at the coalface and stuff, that's really worked amazingly well. And so inside the HDS and inside Project Velocity, we've always had a really high level of coherence, real high level of buy-in and enjoyment in the work, which has been great. But the downside is, if you're outside of it and you can't see in, it makes it hard to understand. And so that's that's where I sort of failed a bit on my stuff, and we've definitely changed that up on other programs of work that we're doing around how we communicate. Because our focus was on making sure that people inside were good, which I'm comfortable that we were very successful with that. But we sort of the bulk of the business, if they don't want to buy in, or if they don't want to look in, then they won't know. And fear is one of the biggest drivers of bad behaviour.
Great. And I imagine, I know you use the word failure, but let's just imagine that you're still communicating and engaging people in the culture of the lean way of working, the housing delivery system, which I'm really enjoying your angle that this is actually a people learning mindset system. How is it being taken up beyond the black box of Project Velocity? I mean, now that it is a system and that's across Kāinga Ora, how are your project managers responding? What kind of feedback are you getting in terms of how to implement it and the lived experience? Yeah.
Well, so I think, look, we're going through a big change at the moment. So the change isn't in trying to retrofit an existing structure. It's about moving to a new way of working. And so where Kāinga Ora is currently shifting, and it's been in the media for that. Like, so it is basically, what do we need to deliver for what the minister's asked us to do, and how do we want them to work? And so basically what we're doing is we're moving the model. So it means you need to move your resource required, which means we need to change the structure. So that is happening. So yeah, that's there. We're sort of at the peak of that at the moment. And change is always challenging and scary. And we've been asked to do a lot less. Last year, we did just under 5,000 homes. We've been asked to do 1,600. That means we don't need as many people. So there is a bit of a people thing going on at the moment, which is hard. And I think that's going to mix the sentiment. I think because if you are they losing their job because of Project Velocity, or are they losing it because we've been asked to do a third of what we're doing before? I think they're the two bits. But I can focusing on the bits I can control, which is making sure that the people who are involved in the delivery and in the mechanism, are they coached and supported well? So that's sort of our real focus.
Great. I can see two sides to that. The making lemonade out of lemons one is that the Project Velocity thinking and the housing delivery system thinking will potentially spread beyond Kāinga Ora, much like how it is with the build partners, if the people involved are working in other places around New Zealand. And New Zealand's a small ecosystem. So that's really interesting. Paul, from a culture change perspective at your place as a build partner, what kind of changes or pushback or embracing of the system have you found? How are people responding to change?
We're reasonably lucky down here in Canterbury, because we've been through an earthquake. So change management is not hard for us as an industry. We've been through the rebuild with insurers and health and safety, and health and safety would be a good analogy to use. That health and safety, we had to change our mindset. We just simply had to. There was no reason we couldn't. HDS hasn't made us change our mindset, but it's challenged me personally. And the most common question I got asked in the early stages was why. And that's fair call. If I'm comfortable getting out of bed every morning and just going through my tasks, and I'm not challenged, then for some reason I don't get excited. Whereas with the HDS system, we were challenged. We learned really we, as Jacinda would say, hard and fast. We learned real quick. But the culture, speaking to the contractors and a lot of the guys that work for us both in our private sector and the HDS system, a lot of them would prefer the HDS system. And the reason is because they get in and they get out. And they know it's organised, because part of what we haven't discussed is the daily attainment. So every morning I need to send some information through to the project manager as to what's going to happen today. And then every afternoon I have to, on the same site, say what has actually happened today. So I'm now accountable. So if I say that fence is going to be painted blue, that fence is going to be painted blue. Simple as that. And what that did is that, with our communication structure that we had to get in place for our contractors, I was telling one version of the truth. So yes, frames are going to be all stood and braced today. Click, here's a photograph back to my project manager, and basically they said, what I've said is happening will happen. And so now we're doing that with our clients on our private work, in the sense that we send them an email every Monday morning to tell them exactly what's going to happen this week, because it's easier in my mind to tell someone that it has happened than try to make an excuse as to why it hasn't happened. So HDS is purely, and Matt's alluded to earlier, it's accountability from the concept right through to the completion of a home, whether it's an internal customer or client, or we're all accountable to somebody.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about there is managing expectations, which is
it's the start of it, isn't it? It's you set your targets, achieve results, and if you don't do that. So I mean, unlike our contractors, I do bounce out of bed every morning saying, how can I help Jennian today? Because I'm part of the team here. But I think what it's taught us around our culture is that I actually appreciate our trades a lot more now than I did pre-HDS, because I've challenged them on what they can do. They've actually performed and to the quality that we need them to perform to. But they've also done it, the safety compliance is something else we haven't spoken about with HDS. We've got certain measures we have to do. It's just made our business better. It simply has. Yeah.
Look, I think we're just scratching the surface of the whole housing delivery system, and obviously its implementation. I guess because we've just got a couple of minutes left, it would be really lovely to touch on how this good news story continues. Really, obviously that word optimization is a good one, Matt. So I guess in terms of how much more can we do, or what's coming up next, it'd be great to hear, how far you think we can push this, or, what's next for you, Matt, in terms of optimization of the system.
I think the only way to know how far you can go is by going too far. I think that's the first thing to know. Like, when you go too far.
Look like? Is that a quality flag or?
No. I think look, quality. It's to do with resource control. It's to do with waste minimization and standardization. Quality is a misnomer. Quality for us is conformance to requirements, and I think people use the word quality. It's almost weaponized a bit. But I think it's largely used in ignorance. I don't think people actually understand what quality means. Like, what is that?
Requirements is better.
Yeah, so conformance to requirements is something that will, because it's a conformance, you either you do or you don't. So that will always be a black and white thing. It's the same as health and safety. We don't want to kind of safe. That's a requirement. It's a threshold activity. But for us, it's around where are the areas of waste? But with the as soon as you stop grinding, like, people think of continuous improvement, and this is a learning for me, was because I used to think the same. Well, we've done our continuous improvement, now we're good, but it's continuous. It's a grind, so it's about being prepared to keep grinding. So how far can we go? I think there's a lot left in the tank yet. I don't think so much it's around time as much. I think we're getting, there's a diminishing returns volume, a portion to some of that stuff. For me, and the 47 days project that Paul's referring to, that's that's probably your best in breed that you can do, right? But if we were to try and get, can you get to 45? It's there's going to be a point where it's not efficient. You could probably do it, but there's no efficiency, but for us, it's more about the delta now. Okay, let's say 47 is the best, but 52 might be the comfy spot for Paul, and he can always hit 52. Okay, cool. That sounds reasonable. Let's stick with the reasonable expectation of 52.
It's
Like
a
it's-
consistency,
yeah,
isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So talking about optimization and improvements around waste, but Paul, from the delivery end, would you add anything into that about next step?
No, it's not the 100-meter sprint. You know, how fast is a human going to get? But I think what we were looking at doing is just making sure that we can do what we're doing, but consistently.
Consistently,
So
great.
just improve some internal systems. So 47 days was a push. Could it be done in 40? Who knows? No one's challenged me yet. But yeah, just some consistency across the board, just to make sure we can deliver exactly the same product, same communication structure, same health and safety, same quality assurance, that we can just deliver to HDS what they're actually asking us to do, is build houses more efficiently, basically.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep watching through the Kāinga Ora comms channel, through the website, and hopefully learning more from the words that you put out through LinkedIn and all the other social media type channels. I think we'll wrap up, given that we're on time. I want to say thanks everybody for listening. I hope you're listening to this either now or in a recorded form, and it's helping you get home or start your day. We will be running our next industry insights in the first week of December, and we will be with some mental health partners like Mates in Construction for that one, which is going to be a really good way to end out a very busy and challenging year. So we'll hope to see everyone back then. And for now, I just want to express our very grateful thanks to Matthew Hulett and Paul Jenkins for talking to us about the housing delivery system. There's a huge lot of learning in there, and I hope folks take away some nuggets to put into place in our everyday lives and businesses. Thanks, folks. New Zealand's building environment thanks you for trying to improve us. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks. Ka kite anō.